Anyway, it's all good. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parujika Charja Ashtotar the Shishimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujika Charja Ashtotar the Shishimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 9th day of June, 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 12 entitled Devotional Service. And we are on text 8 on page 517. Mayeva Mana Adhatsva May Buddhim Niveshaya Nivasishyasi Mayeva Ato Urdhvam Nasangshayaha Mayeva Mana Adhatsva May Buddhim Niveshaya Nivasishyasi Mayeva Ato Urdhvam Nasangshayaha Mayeva Mana Adhatsva May Buddhim Niveshaya Nivasishyasi Mayeva Ato Urdhvam Nasangshayaha. Go ahead, Glenn. Mayeva Mana Adhatsva May Buddhim Niveshaya Nivasishyasi Mayeva Ato Urdhvam Nasangshayaha. Maya eva mana adhatsva. Maya buddhing niveshaya. Nivasishyasi maya eva. Ata urdvang nasangshayaha. Maya eva mana adhatsva. Maya buddhing niveshaya. Nivasishyasi maya eva. Ata urdvang nasangshayaha. Maya eva mana adhatsva. Maya buddhing niveshaya. Nivasishyasi maya eva. Ata urdvang nasangshayaha. Mai, upon me, eva, certainly, manaha, mind, adhatsva, fix. Mai, upon me, buddhim, intelligence, niveshaya, apply, nivasishyasi, you will live. Mai, in me, eva, certainly, ataha, urdvam, thereafter. Na, never, sangshayaha, doubt. Excuse me. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. Purport. One who is engaged in Lord Krishna's devotional service lives in a direct relationship with the Supreme Lord. So there is no doubt that his position is transcendental from the very beginning. A devotee does not live on the material plane. He lives in Krishna. The holy name of the Lord and the Lord are non-different. Therefore, when a devotee chants Hare Krishna, Krishna and his internal potency are dancing on the tongue of the devotee. When he offers Krishna food, Krishna directly accepts these eatables, and the devotee becomes Krishnaized by eating the remnants. One who does not engage in such service cannot understand how this is so, although this is a process recommended in the Bhagavad Gita and in other Vedic literatures. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So Krishna is again giving us the direct answer. He's emphasizing again and again in this chapter, rightfully so, since it's titled Bhakti Yoga, the devotional service. And here he's reiterating, Mai eva mana adatsva, to fix your mind on me. Now there's a distinct element here in these verses of what we commonly call yoga, where you fix your mind. Fix your mind on the object of meditation. And of course in Bhakti Yoga the object is Krishna. So everything begins with that, really. When we begin chanting Hare Krishna, we're fixing the mind on Krishna in the form of his holy name. And we learn from the beginning that the holy name is not different from Krishna himself. Everything directly related to Krishna has Krishna's potency, direct internal potency involved with it. Like the deity, the prasadam, even the paintings. It depends on your state of consciousness how much you experience that. Just like even ourselves in the neophyte stage, we have a different experience when we come before the deity. You know, you're doing some service for the deity. You're trying to remember during the day. You know, you've read something about the beauty of the deity, and you're experiencing him in a much more personal way than someone who just walks in for the first time and is checking out the scene. You know, I mean, when we again, hopefully soon, we'll have regular Sunday feasts. People will be, you know. So sometimes you see there's people in the back, you know, and there's I say the mudras, you know, this kind of mudra. You know, I'm not letting you in, you know, like that. The devotee is like, Haribol, you know, or you're praying, you know. Mudras are very important. I told you, yeah, no hands in the pocket, not allowed, you know. So, no offense. So, the state of consciousness is everything. The how you experience. I like to give the examples of these pictures because so much in this Bhagavad Gita, you read the 13th chapter, and in this chapter, is how you're developing the ability to see differently. All your senses become purified. It begins with the ear, of course, your hearing, and chanting. But by purifying the sound vibration that you're hearing, all the senses become purified, and you see differently. Again, a new person walks into the temple, or even a child, even a devotee child. They don't know anything about the pastimes. So what do these paintings really mean? It's just a little more than what an animal would see. I mean, of course, a child can develop a wonderful intelligence. But someone who's familiar with Krishna's pastimes, like Prabhupada, would see these paintings. He specifically said the windows to the spiritual world. He would actually see, Sita Ram there, not a painting of Sita Ram. It was wonderful. Even those crude early paintings that went into the Krishna book, there's a certain charm there because the devotees are trying. They're innocent. And there's a special quality to them, but Prabhupada would relish them like anything. He would be seeing the pastimes and acted like that. And we can also appreciate to some degree the degree that we're purified and we know what's going on. So everything depends on your state of consciousness as you're experiencing the world through your senses. So by fixing the mind on Krishna, the whole world becomes Krishnized. Prabhupada used that word. I never agreed with that, because I'm an editor. Prabhupada always said Krishnized, but they decided long ago to make it Krishnaized. But I like that Krishnized word, So anyway, the world actually as it is, we know from the 7th chapter, different parts of the Bhagavad Gita, it's simply expansion of Krishna's energy. So someone who's aware of that, who's fully, Krishna conscious, he sees the whole world as Krishna's playground. There's even a verse by Prabodananda Saraswati. He's talking about being empowered by the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya. This book is a wonderful book. I made a recording out of it. I have a bunch of recordings. Some of you may know. I just give them away. This is a wonderful book called the Chaitanya Chandramrita, the nectar moon of Lord Chaitanya. Prabodananda Saraswati, he was an uncle of Gopal Bhatta. When Lord Chaitanya went to South India, he came to, was it Rameshwaram? I forget. Which was? Srirangam, sorry. And Venkata Bhatt, who was the father of Gopal, who at that time was a young boy, I think, not fully. And they lived together, and his brother was Prabodananda Saraswati. And they were devotees in the Sri Sampradaya. And during the 4 months of the rainy season, called the Chaturmasya, Chatur means 4, Masya means month, between July, August, September, October, November, like that, there's 4 months where it rains a lot. And those itinerant preachers, we call them mendicants, devotees who travel and preach, they can't travel, they can't walk, because it's too rainy and stormy, so they have to find a place to stay for 4 months. If you know the story of Narada Muni was just a simple boy. His mother was like a maidservant, there was no father in the house, and a simple boy. And so, but she was pious, she was a devotee. And so these Bhakti Vedantas, Prabhupada called them, pure devotees, they decided to stay she invited them to stay at her place for the 4 months. And Narada Muni, as a boy, a little child, he was doing services, doing the laundry, bringing the prasadam, And he asked if he could take some remnants, he asked for permission, he said yes, And in this way, he became Narada Muni in his next life. He went, he became so purified. So the Gopal Bhatta, Lord Chaitanya stayed there, and by his influence, they all became Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And Gopal Bhatta later on became Gopal Bhatta Goswami and started the Radharaman temple and wrote the Hari Bhakti Vilas, so many things. So this Prabodananda Saraswati, he was a great scholar. And he wrote so many wonderful books, Chaitanya Chandramrita, and I was just looking at this book called Radha Rasa Sudhanadi, all about Radharani, and some plays and other books. So in this book, he has this verse, it probably would quote, by getting the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, by preaching and being sincere devotee. Here's the result. He says, Kaivalyang nadakayate tridashapur akasha pushpayate durdantendriya kada sarvapatali protkata dangstrayate vishwang purna sukhayate vidimahindra jishtakitayate yat karunya kataksha vaibhavatam tam gorname vastumak. I glorify Gaurachanda, Lord Chaitanya, one who is empowered by his merciful sidelong glance. This is the experience, the mentality. First thing is Kaivalya. Now Kaivalya is impersonal liberation, merging into the Brahma Jyoti, For a devotee, Narakayate. He's going to make the wicks, right? You're going to make a nice little pails, easily lit. So, in other words, he's going through, first the impersonalist. For the devotee, merging into Brahman is like going to hell, Why? Because there's no opportunity for service. For service, you need three things. You need Bhagavan, you need the Bhakti, and you need the Bhakta. The relationship is Bhakti. So you need the Bhakta, the Bhagavan, and the Bhakti between them. There's none of that in the Brahma Jyoti. No form, no activities, no nothing. Forget it, I don't want to go there. And Tridashapur Akasha Pushpayate. So Tridashapur refers to all the different heavenly planets. It says 30, but it's like 33 million or something. There's many minor ones, and we saw major ones like Indraloka, Chandraloka. These. A lot of people in the Indian culture, they strive for that through the karma kanda. You've heard of this karma kanda, with a lot of rituals and sacrifices, austerities, to try to go to heaven, and enjoy it. So for the devotees, they're already enjoying like anything. They don't want to go to heavenly planet, because it's easier to forget Krishna there with all of the opulence and enjoyment, So they see it as a akasha pushpa, a sky flower. In other words, it's like imaginary. Who cares, And then durdantendriya kada sarvapatali prokata dangstrayate. This refers to the yogis. So first he starts with the impersonalist meditators. Now he talks with the demigod worshippers, and now he's talking about the yogis. Maybe the devotees want to become yogis, Said no, They'll say, because the yogis, their whole thing is controlling the senses. Go alone, get away from any distractions, and work on it. But they don't have, the holy name and the prasadam, So he says, Durdantendriya kala sarpa. The senses, uncontrolled senses are like poisonous snakes. They'll bite you by forcing you or inviting you to enjoy this, enjoy this, enjoy this. In this way you become bound up. So he says, Durdanta. Danta is control, and dur is difficult. Indriya sarpa, pratali. Prodkata dangstrayate. So the senses, you have the same senses, but because they're being used in Krishna's service, they can't bite you. In fact, they can just help you. So it's like a big, cobra or something, but he's got no fangs. He opens his mouth and he's got no fangs. So who cares, He can't frighten anybody, So in other words, the senses are purified. They become your friends. It's not and no danger there. And then, this is why I quoted this verse to begin with, how you see the universe. Vishwang purna sukhayate. It's just like Prahlad says, I'm immersed in your Krishna Gita. I'm not at all in trouble. I'm enjoying within. So this is what he says. Vishwang purna, the whole universe is full of happiness for the devotee, because he sees Krishna everywhere. Even something happened to himself, if something, he gets some disease or whatever, he says, oh, this is just a result of my past activity. I was supposed to suffer so much more. But Krishna minimized how kind my Lord is. Now, when nice things happen, he says, oh, Krishna's given me more facility to serve him. How kind he is. So either way, you keep your positive attitude to Krishna, you see. So this is what a devotee sees. And when we fix our mind on Krishna, and we have abundant ways to do that, beginning with chanting the holy name and the deities, the devotees, just like to hear from the devotees, to associate with devotees. I've just been reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita in chapter 8 of the Madhya Lila. This is the talks of Ramananda Roy. It's such a wonderful, full description of high levels of Krishna Bhakti. And at one point, Lord Chaitanya is in the role of the student, and he empowers Ramananda Roy to be the guru. Ramananda says, no, I'm just a Sudra. He had a social position as a Sudra, but he was really very learned, And Lord Chaitanya says famously, Kiba Vipra, Kiba Nyasi, Shudra Kene Noi, Ye Krishna Tattva Vete Se Guru Hoy. whether one is a Brahmin or a sannyasi or a Shudra, it doesn't matter. In other words, your social position. If you know the science of Krishna, you can be a guru. So he's encouraging him. And then later on, Ramananda says, yes, I spoke all these things, but you were moving my mouth like a puppet. In other words, you were really speaking through me, and you're listening. So one of the things at the end of the whole conversation is there's a series of questions and answers. And one of the questions is, what's the greatest misery in this world? And Ramananda Roy says, aside from being separated from devotees, there's no actual misery in this world. In other words, if you can be in the association of devotees, there may be so much other trouble out there, but you can weather it, you can take shelter and get sustenance. So all of these fix one's mind on me. We find that it becomes, for the gopis, they're the ideal. They're praying. We'd like to stop thinking about Krishna, but we can't. In other words, so much trouble. He's gone away, to Mathura and everything. But we can't stop thinking about him. That's the problem. In other words, it's a very high level. When you get to the point where you're really in love with Krishna, you've awakened the original love for Krishna. That's going to come up in the purport we read. Then there's no question of forgetting Krishna. It's like your life breath. Radharani never forgets Krishna. And those who follow and who train never forget Krishna, the great devotees. So, but in the sadhana stage, this is my eva, fix your mind on me, and your intelligence then engage in me. Apply. What does he say? Engage all your intelligence in me. So, what's the difference? So, the mind simply, to think of Krishna, to hear His holy name with great attention, to see His deity form, to hear His pastimes, Intelligence involves memory, you see, and planning how to serve Krishna. In other words, engaging in the intelligence, not in ways how you can, get more sense gratification, but in ways in which you can increase the service to Krishna. That's engaging the intelligence. That's what he's talking about. And then you
Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. Nivasishyasi Mayeva. You will live in me. So this is very important. Prabhupada, when he was on 2nd Avenue. By the way, those lectures are amazing. The ones he gave in 1966 on 2nd Avenue. After so many months of struggle, he finally has an audience. He has his own place, And Prabhupada is just pouring it out. It's very wonderful. If you have a chance, I can make him available to you if you want. But at one point, he was asked, you must be hankering to go, back to your Vrindavan and everything, He says, well, it's not that I'm, I may be physically here. He didn't use these very words, but this is the meaning. But I'm actually still in Vrindavan. He's still feeling, that he's in Vrindavan because he's always remembering Krishna and he's always remembering Vrindavan. And that's where you really live, is where your consciousness is. You may be physically in one place, but if you're absorbed in thinking of India or anywhere, that's where you are, where your consciousness is. So that's what he's saying here. And in the end, you'll certainly come to me. Your mind, your senses, your intelligence, everything is linked to Krishna in yoga. That's yoga. Then where else are you going to go? At the end there, you'll just be continuing to do what you already did. So this is again at the highest level. And then he's going to start saying, if you can't do that, then do this. In other words, he's very broad-minded and very open to help us advance in this chapter. Was that you, Dhanavari? Hello?
Yes, Prabhu. I thought somebody had a question, so I thought they wanted me to ask, but sorry.
It's me. I have a question.
Okay. Okay, Krishna Bhajan. Is there any point where you don't have a question? Anyway, I'm not complaining.
Oh,
it's good.
I have billions, trillions of questions.
Okay. Time is limited. Go ahead. We'll try to be succinct.
Yes. May I?
Please.
Dravida Prabhu, thank you very much. My question is related to the following. Thus, you will live in me always without a doubt. So, Prabhu, I'm not finding Lord Krishna here in this verse, chanting to Arjuna in order to explain to him what happens when a person decides to live in Krishna? Because right now, like I said to you yesterday, I am living in my house. Specifically, I am living in my kitchen with my computer, through which I am listening to your class. So what I need to know from you, and this is my question: what is the difference between living in Krishna and living in my house? Because I do not see Krishna here explaining what it means to live in him.
Yeah,
that is my question. What is the difference between living in Krishna and living in my house?
Okay, all right. Let's see if we can explore this now, because I'm not at that level where I'm, also living in Krishna 124 hours a day. But the idea is that even while living in your house, you can also be living in Krishna. If you see everything there, and if you use everything there, and everything's being used for Krishna's service, and you're aware of that as you do it. In other words, it's also a state of consciousness. We've all had experience. I've had experience. You're right in front of the deities, but something is about, something's going on. Somebody said something about you online or something, and your mind wanders, even even in front of Krishna. Whereas someone like Srila Prabhupada, just visualize. I lived in New York City. I know exactly, the places where he started and where he was living. And his Bowery, is a very unpleasant place. You got all the Bowery is a place where if someone became what we call in those days a derelict, you don't have a job, the family's broken up, you're on the street, they would go to the Bowery in New York and make their way there. It wasn't like every city has its own Bowery. So there was it was a very unpleasant place, and Prabhupada was living there in an upstairs walk-up. He's an elderly gentleman, but he was still fixed in his devotion. He was still living in Krishna. He saw the streets, he saw the derelicts, he saw everything as part of Krishna's energy, and internally he was serving Krishna in his original Swarup. That's a very important part of it. And he was completely serving Lord Chaitanya and his spiritual master. His activities were all completely in tune with their desires. So he felt completely connected. And it's not that he was not, thinking that one day he could go back to Vrindavan, and everything like that. That's also there. But basically he was well situated. He felt happy there because of all of these things I just mentioned. So that's why no matter where he was, he could do that in the plane like that. Now, on ourselves, now I saw your kitchen, because I've been on the Zoom, you have all kinds of pictures there, and your computer is there, but the computer's zoomed into classes and things like that. So whatever we have, beginning with our own body, if we use our intelligence to engage in Krishna's service, then that becomes an instance for helping us to remember Krishna. Just like sound. There are so many millions and trillions of sounds that we can hear that can distract us from Krishna. And they do. That's right at the beginning of the second canto, where Parikshit asks a question, what should I hear and think about at the time of death? And Shukadev praises the question. This question is for the benefit of everyone who hears it. Not for the one who asks it, the one who answers it, and the one who listens in. But there's others. Those who are simply wrapped up in materialistic family life or whatever. They have millions of things to hear. Like the internet is mostly a Tower of Babel. I'll just just to give one example, it's an utter disaster in my humble opinion to have this internet where anyone with a cell phone can hit the right buttons, and you can get into porn and like that, and you have the teenagers and getting that. It's just horrific. It's horrible for the consciousness. But at the same time, of course, we know you can hit other buttons, and you can watch the Bhagavad Gita class or Prabhupada chanting. So it's all a question of your consciousness, of how you choose to where you direct your consciousness. So living in Krishna means that every moment you're choosing to think of Krishna, glorify Krishna, and do things that express your love for Krishna. This is a very important point. Yeah, there's this wonderful verse that's kind of an expansion of the verse we read in the 9th chapter, where Krishna says, Yat karoshi, yarashnasi, yajohosi dadasiyat. Whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, whatever you do it as austerity. Whatever you do it for me. This is a high standard of devotional service. So in the teachings of the 9 Yogendras, you may have noticed I really like those. One of the verses goes like, Kayena vacha manasendriyava buddhyatmanava nusasasvabhavat sarvatmana yak sharanam shadan no yat karoti sakalam parasmai narayanayati samarpayeta. So he goes through the list. Kayena, with your body, with your senses, with your mind, with your intelligence, with yourself, whatever you have and whatever you're doing, you consider this is an offering to Narayan, or this is an offering to Krishna. Now, it's not just some mental exercise. By the instructions of the Guru and the sadhus, you have to know how you can use all those elements in devotional service, and you're choosing to do that. Even though there may be a pull and a push to do something else, you're fixed in that. That's pure devotional service. Then how are you living anywhere but with Krishna? At every moment, you're considering, I'm doing this for Krishna. This is what it means to be completely inactive. Your impetus for action is not coming from your own false ego or whatever, but it's coming from the higher source. And this is, when you consider it, this is a definition of the highest love. You're completely tuned in to what the beloved wants, and you're working like as hard as you can to fulfill that desire. You know, that's like a parent, a mother. She's so attuned to the child if there's any discomfort or anything. You know, that's the real love. So that's what it means to live always in Krishna. But of course, it's a very high standard. And to come up to that point, we need training, how we can progressively more and more absorb ourselves in Krishna. And that will be described in the next verse. That's the best I can do on that, Vijay Krishna.
Dravida Prabhu, again, thank you very much for a wonderful answer to my question. Hare Krishna.
Okay, let us go on. Text number 9. Unless we have others. Okay, text number 9. Adachittam samadatum nashaknoshi maistiram abhyasa yogain tato yogain tato mamit chaptam dhananjaya. My dear Arjun, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. Purport. In this verse, 2 different processes of Bhakti Yoga are indicated. The first applies to one who has actually developed an attachment for Krishna. That's the Chittam Samadatam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by transcendental love. And the other is for one who has not developed an attachment for the Supreme Person by transcendental love. For this second class, there are different prescribed rules and regulations one can follow to be ultimately elevated to the stage of attachment to Krishna. Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. At the present moment in material existence, the senses are always impure, being engaged in sense gratification. But by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, these senses can become purified, and in the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. In this material existence, I may be engaged in some service to some master, but I don't really lovingly serve my master. I simply serve to get some money. And the master also is not in love. He takes service from me and pays me. So there's no question of love. But for a spiritual life, one must be elevated to the pure stage of love. That stage of love can be achieved by practice of devotional service performed with the present senses. This love of God is now in a dormant state in everyone's heart. And there, love of God is manifested in different ways. But it is contaminated by material association. Now the heart has to be purified purified of the material association, and that dormant natural love for Krishna has to be revived. That is the whole process. To practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, one should, under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, follow certain principles, One should rise early in the morning, take bath, enter the temple and offer prayers and chant Hare Krishna. Then collect flowers to offer to the deity, cook foodstuffs to offer to the deity, take prasadam, and so on. There are various rules and regulations which one should follow. And one should constantly hear the Bhagavad Gita in Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees. This practice can help anyone rise to the level of love of God, and then he is sure of his progress into the spiritual kingdom of God. This practice of Bhakti Yoga under the rules and regulations with the direction of a spiritual master will surely bring one to the stage of love of God. So the whole thing, this is called the sadhana bhakti, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Sadhana means a practice to take you to the goal, sadhya. The sadhya is, you learn on day one, go back to Godhead, get free from birth, all these days and deaths, and to be reinstated in our original position of love for Krishna. In the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami, he has a verse which is directly pertinent here. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema, Sadhya Kabunoi, Shovanadi Shuddha Chitte Kodeye Udoy. Now it's interesting, he uses this word sadhya, but he uses it in the context a little differently. So the first statement is Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem, that the eternal perfection of love of Krishna, pure love for Krishna, is not a sadhya, not something to be attained that's artificial. It's something that's already there. It's already in our heart. Sadhya Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Kariye Udoy. So from hearing, etc. Now hearing, etc. means hearing, chanting, and worshipping, and all the other 9 processes. But the main ones are hearing and chanting. Those two you can, and remembering. Now, hearing and chanting you can do practically anywhere, and certainly remembering you can do anywhere. So the more hearing and chanting you do with full attention and the right attitude, the better your remembrance will be, And so that remembrance, that you can take anywhere, no matter what time, maybe at the time of death or in your prime of life, you can always remember. And so that's really what we're aiming for. There's a verse in the 12th canto, near the very end of the Bhagavatam. And there happens to be 8 verses leading up to the final verse. And so it's Ashtaka. There's an Ashtaka. It's called, I dubbed it the Krishna Katashtaka, because it's all about the glories of hearing and chanting. I won't go through the whole thing tonight. But the last verse talks about what the fruit of this hearing and chanting is, which avismriti Krishna Padada Vindayo. Vismriti is a very important word. And I worked on that. The 12th canon was not translated by Srila Prabhupada. It was translated by Gopi Puranananda Prabhu and Nidhyananda Das Goswami, and I worked as an editor. So, smriti means to remember. Avismriti means not to forget. Vismriti means to forget. Avismriti means not to forget. And the way that what the word actually means, because we have remembrance of the lotus feet of Krishna. That's what we had it until I just fixed it. No, constant remembrance, constant remembrance. Not to ever forget. That means always to remember. You see? So constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Krishna, which is the fruit of serious and constant, and proper hearing and chanting. What's the benefits? Chinotya bodhrani cha shangtanoti. The first thing is all of the sufferings you have from previous activities or whatever, they're destroyed. Now, it's not that immediately, you have an old sick body and you burst forth with a useful body. It doesn't work like that. But you're not suffering from the disease. You're transcending it. In other words, you're on a different plane. So chinotya shangtanoti, and it increases all of your good fortune. Sham is the word in Shankara, is the name for Shiva. Means that he causes good fortune everywhere. So, but this constant remembrance of Krishna's lotus feet is, practical for us. So then it goes on, and it very pertinent to this other verse I was describing. Sattvasya shuddhim, and what Prabhupada describes here, purification. Purifies one's existence. The more we remember Krishna's lotus feet, the more we chant the direct remembrance of Krishna. Sattvasya shuddhim padamatma bhaktim. These are all results, and engenders
pure devotion to the Supreme Personality, Paramatma Bhakti, is Krishna. This is Krishna's lotus feet. Which is characterized by jnana, vijnana, and vairagya. By knowledge, realized knowledge, direct perception, and detachment from everything else beside Krishna. So that constant remembrance of Krishna, which is what he's talking about in the previous verse, previous verse was Mayeva Mana Adasva. This verse is about the sadhana that gets us to that point. My dear, if you can't fix your mind upon me right away without deviation, then follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga, sadhana bhakti. Abhyasa. Abhyasa means practice. Abhyasa yogena tato mam chaptam dana. Now, very illuminating here. Every word is so important. You'll get the desire to attain me. Everything depends on desire. What we're doing in Krishna consciousness is really purifying our desire. At the end of the 3rd chapter, such an important part. If anyone who's heard my classes know I like to refer to that. Arjuna asks the question. He says, what is it that makes us do things that we really know are not good for us? You know? So what do you think Krishna says? Kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudbhava. It's lust, Arjuna, which turns into wrath or anger, which is born of the mode of passion. You know? And this covers our knowledge. Avitam gyanametina gyanunatavaidina. With different degrees, you know. So that lust, Prabhupada explains in the purport, is nothing but love of God. It's prema that's been curdled, if you will, by contact with the modes of nature. But it's the same thing. So that lust, that material desire, has to be sublimated into pure desire for Krishna, which is what the definition of prema. Pure desire to serve Krishna constantly in ecstasy. So that purification takes place through the process of sadhana. And so you will attain the desire for me. Everything is you know, is like in our practice of sadhana, we're not always spontaneously attracted, you know, especially to get up, because you're coming out of the mode of ignorance, you know. And it's not spontaneous. Who is spontaneously attracted, especially if you're used to getting up, you know, 7:30, 7 o'clock, whatever. You know, 3:30, 4? What is this, you know? You have to readjust your whole, you know, biological clock and everything. So that's a point of surrender every day. And that's why it's so good to be in the ashram. Because everyone's getting up, you know, okay, I'm going to lie in here, I have to get up, you know. And before you know, you start chanting, you know, and getting into the cold shower. That's like a wonderful surrender. It really helps, you know. It wakes you up, you know, and you say, yeah, you know, it helps you become detached. It's very good. So anyway, that practice gradually becomes second nature. It certainly becomes second nature to get up early. You know, I've been doing this so long. There's no way I can sleep past 3:30. You know, that's late for me. You know, so and it's not like, oh, are you kidding? All this time I got to get up late. No, it's just what I do. You know, you can change. It changed. So Mamip Chaptam Dhananjaya. So probably this wonderful paragraph here. You know, Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. That's what it is. So the Prabhupada quote, Sarvapadi Vina Tatparadvena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchite. Here is the definition of bhakti, beginning of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. To be free of all these false designations. This is a big thing. Is that we, in the bodily concept of life, we're completely in tune, you know. We identify ourselves with a certain age and race and language and all of these things we have, you know, gender. So all of that is artificial. I mean, this is one body. We've had millions of bodies before. We'll have future bodies. So what's the point of just identifying with this body, which is always changing, you know? And now, due to our wonderful, you know, cell phone age, you can change how you look. You know, you take a selfie and then you fix it up, you know. So now you have to live up to that image, the perfect image that's on the cell phone that you projected. But that's not you, you know. They're going to see me, and I'm a little fatter, and I have, you know, some problems with my skin. So it's a great. So you become an anxiety, right? Because the over-identification with the body is just impossible. So a devotee, you know, cut off the hair, you know. I mean, I've saved tens of that. I think at least $10,000 over the years in haircuts. You know, once a week. So it becomes absurd. You realize, you know, this bodily identification. So anyway, this following the regular principle of bhakti purifies the senses, purifies the mind, purifies everything, our being, and the natural love for Krishna awakens. This is what's so great. It's not something artificial. All of this misidentification with the body, this dreamlike world, that's artificial. You know, arte vidyamane pi sankshate nanavartate. This verse appears 5 times in the Bhagavatam. In truth, this samsara, or going through birth and death and all the suffering, is unreal in the sense that it's impermanent. It's changing all the time, right? So in that sense. But it doesn't cease as long as we're absorbed in sense gratification. Dhyayato vishayanasya swapne anarta kamoyata. Just as the sufferings of a nightmare don't cease until when? You wake up. So this is a big waking up process. Jeev jago, jeev jago. Wake up to the great treasure of the human life. How many verses I was giving one. Labdva sudurlamamidam bahusambhavante. The whole thing is a huge dream. We put so much importance on this, on that, and this and that, and then your life is over, and all of those concerns, as family concerns, political concerns, all this stuff, is gone. You're now in a new situation, and maybe a human life, maybe another, and then you wake up after 7 months in a human body and start all over again. What is it? There's no meaning to it. Prabhupada gives, I heard these lectures are great. For example, there's a saying in Bengal, I worked so hard and built this house, but alas, after I finished it, it burned down, So that's what we're doing. We're building this relationship, that relationship, the kids and this and that, and so many things, status, and all that. And then you finally come to the end, you leave the body, all that's left behind, you forget everything. If you go to a human body for 7 months, or 7.5 months, Prabhupada always, when he says that you take birth after 10 months, lunar months. 10 lunar months is 9, 10 lunar months is 9 solar months. We go by solar months, solar calendar. That's why 10, So you wake up after 7 or so months, so it's all forgetting, and then you got to start over again. Forget everything. So you just all burn down. All of the things that you put so much importance on. So the whole point in beginning devotional service is to prioritize what's really important. What should I strive for in this life? And that, and if you're serious, you make your best effort to strive for Krishna consciousness, to come to that natural and original platform of love for God and discover our original relationship with Krishna, And if we do it right this lifetime or a few lifetimes in the future, get reinstated in our original position and never come back again. Going there, you don't come back. Because you have some little recollection. I don't want to try that again. I already tried that. With so much suffering for millions of births. So that's, but it takes abhyas. It takes some practice. That's it. And and then the next one, it says if you can't do that, we won't do that verse tonight, I don't think. But if you can't even practice, then try to at least be generous and give. And Prabhupada has a whole purport how you can, we need money. You can give a donation. I remember back in '79, I was living in New York. There was a big temple. For 4 years, we had a temple on 55th Street, 11 stories high. It was wonderful. We couldn't keep it. It was too expensive to run it. But there was a devotee. We had a shop there, where we had gift shop, like everything, everything. So people would come in that gift shop. He would show them this purport. And we would preach to him about how, okay, we understand you have your job and everything like that, but you see, and then every organization needs some place, some capital, some labor, So in other words, give us a donation. This will be good for your spiritual life. It's not, we're not begging here. It was very effective. So we'll come to that purport tomorrow. Any questions? Danavar?
Yes, I have one more question.
All right, you got your question right. Danavar, you have a question?
Yes, Prabhu. I have one question. Thank you. Very wonderful class. Thank you. You mentioned Rushikena Rushikesha. That means with senses we are praying to Rishikesh. Is that what it means?
No, it's Sevanam. The whole phrase is Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. To serve the master of the senses with our present senses. To recognize these senses aren't ours. They're meant for serving Krishna. Just like the hand, If the hand thinks independently, what kind of hand is that? You know? The hand does my what I want it to do. Then it's a happy hand. It's a natural hand, you know? Or if it gets paralyzed or something, right? So we're meant to be Krishna's hands and legs. That's why it says, you know, the Lord has thousands and millions of legs everywhere. There are hands and legs. There's a wonderful verse. This verse you'll never memorize. It's in the 87th chapter of the 10th canto. If you're interested in memorizing it, but after you hear it, you may have second thoughts. I think I forgot it. Yadanupatam kulai midamapma sarit priyavat chadati taton maketvihi te priya atmanicha nabadadamandaho vasadupasanaya atmahano yadanushaya brahme urubaye kusharir. Jazz. You know, before this creation is the jazz. You know? So what this verse says is that, my dear Lord, the human form of life is the best form for serving you. And if one nicely serves you with his mind, body, senses, intelligence, then the body becomes very dear. In other words, it becomes a paraphernalia for service. It's this natural thing. And as far as you goes, you're nicely in the super soul giving instruction and everything's fine. But alas, nabadadamantaho, those who do not take their pleasure in serving you with their senses, but try to take pleasure in the senses, asadupasanaya, they worship the impermanent, known as mammon, you know, in the Bible, right? Asadupasanaya atmahano, and thus commit spiritual suicide. Atmahano. And what's the result? Then, Yadanushya, trying to fulfill these material desires, they wander among so many bad bodies, not even human bodies, but subhuman bodies, and suffer like anything, you know. So this is the choice. You know, the natural state of the soul is to serve Krishna. And when we, under the instructions of the spiritual master, the Shastra and the sadhus, we get perform the sadhana by which we are using the senses, mind, intelligence for Krishna, then we're naturally situated. And there's a certain joy that comes in. It's not necessarily, it's not sense gratification. It's the joy that comes from the soul pleasing Krishna. That's the real happiness. And so, that's what Rishikena Rishikesha means. With your Sevanam, serving the master, and with free of the material designations. Whatever state we're in, you know, when we get it. We may be very old, we may be young, we may be crippled, we may be not, but whatever we have, you know, what does Krishna say? Prana artha diya vacha. With your life force, you know, with your wealth, with your intelligence, with your words, to serve others by giving them Krishna consciousness. This is the perfection of life. Become Krishna conscious yourself, and to give everything for the service of others by helping them become Krishna conscious. Then you become happy in this world, which is otherwise dukkha-alayam, you know, is a place of misery. Is that all right, Dhanamari?
Thank you so much. Wonderful, Prabhu. Excellent. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
really. All glory to your service. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
What about my question?
Oh boy. All right. Is it a quick one? Real quick.
Yes, it is. You said in your class that to make it for because pure love goes when pure love goes into lust.
Yeah.
And related to this, I think Srila Prabhupada said that when it happens, it's like milk turn into yogurt. And we, you know better than me that to make yogurt go into being milk again, that is impossible.
Yes.
So this is to show, this example is to show how difficult it can be to transform lust again into pure love of God. So my question is, when you say to a person that transforming yogurt in milk is impossible, and then the person will think, oh my God, if I go for the process of Bhakti Yoga, then it will be impossible, because if it is like turning yogurt into milk again, that is not possible. So how would you explain to this person in relation to how difficult it is to transform lust in pure love again, because
Okay.
many people, they give up because of this.
All right, we're running out of time, so let me give a preliminary answer. First of all, I want you to send me, Dravida108 at Gmail, the quote that describes that, because I think you may be mixing two things up. You mix, the milk. If you get sick by drinking too much milk, you can cure it with a milk product known as yogurt. But you're right that in the third chapter, Prabhupada says that once this pure love, prema, is turned into kama by the modes of nature, it's very difficult to regain it again. But he does say there that it's possible by the process of devotional service. I mean, we say it's easy, but it's easy to start it, but it's not so easy to go the whole course and do it, because we're so conditioned. It depends on so many things. But the thing is, there's a statement by Krishna's Kaviraj, Atmandriya Britti Vansha Tare Prema Bali Kam, Krishnandriya Britti Icha Dare Prem Nam. He's contrasting kama and prema. Kama is like iron and prema is like gold. They're both metals, but they're completely different. So the idea is that a desire to satisfy our own senses is kama, and desire to satisfy Krishna's senses is prema. So under training, we can use these very senses for satisfying Krishna's pleasure, and therefore gradually purify our desires so that it becomes prema. And we really have to end now because the curtains are going to open. All right, we'll talk tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.